Alright, folks. Hello, everyone. My apologies because, I scheduled this tea time stream for 2 p.m. and I kept telling myself, schedule it for 3 because you might not have enough time to set up for it. And I didn't. I thought, you know what, I'll just work extra fast and get ready for the stream, and I was wrong. I didn't have enough time to prepare for it. So, right now I have tea brewing in a mug, which unfortunately is kind of not proper for tea time. So, come on. Skip. There we go. So, yeah. So, it's going to be tea in a mug with some shortbread. What are people talking about? And the other thing too is I'm not wearing a jacket today because it is really hot in my apartment. Usually this time of year we have very cold weather, and like 2 weeks ago we had what we thought was the last heat wave of the summer, but we had we're having currently a short warm spell, and so yeah, it came as kind of a surprise. So anyway, pull out some of these shortbreads from my. No, I don't want to put that upside down. Put that right side up. It was just crazy warm weather right now, but in the next couple of days it's going to be cold and rainy again. So, but it just so happens that the warm weather always falls on a day when I'm doing afternoon tea, so I can't like properly dress for it and be comfortable. Instead, I have to sit in this really hot room, which is just killing me right now. I can't even believe how hot this room gets. And and the other thing too is I put away, I had put away my air conditioners because we weren't expecting warm weather anymore. It's supposed to be cold from now on. So yeah, I put away my air conditioners, and now I'm just not prepared, So, I'll try one of these circular ones as well. There we go. John C. says it's surprisingly warm. Yeah, it's weird, It's just like we're supposed to have the colder autumn weather. Why isn't this sliding back over? So, and you guys know, like, I don't like the warm weather. I really don't. I get cranky. I do not like the sun. I sound like a vampire when I say that. But I don't like the sun. I don't. I would prefer it to be cloudy all day, every day, if only that didn't negatively affect the environment. It is time for my tea, so I'll be right back. I gotta go get that. Okay, I'm back. Alright, let me get to the comments here. Louis Wright. Louis Wright, we do, in certain places of the U.S., there might be like one random shop that sells mince pies. But the thing is that it's not common here in the United States. Most people in the United States haven't really had them. So yeah, it's not easy. There is a place in Portland somewhere that sells them, but to have them ordered and delivered, and it's too expensive and it's too time consuming, so I just don't do it. But I usually try to make all my own stuff for afternoon tea, whenever I can. For the longest time, I was making tea sandwiches to have with my afternoon tea, but always trying to schedule the groceries to arrive in a decent amount of days until leading up to a tea time was just not, it was not working. So, but I still do want to return back to making tea sandwiches. Plus, with the colder weather, it'll work out better because my favorite is the cucumber sandwiches, but they kind of melt in the warm weather and they get sloppy and everywhere. So yeah, I'm waiting for the cooler weather to eat cucumber sandwiches. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, everybody knows. I mean, if you're new here, I usually have like a proper actual china set that I use for afternoon tea. And I have it all set up and everything, but it takes time to set it up. So, yeah. Ozzy says, that's a big cup, Alex. It's not that big. It looks big to you guys because it's forced perspective, but this is actually just a regular 12-ounce mug, which is what we have in the United States. This is actually considered, by today's standards, a small cup of coffee. So, but this is tea, actually, I should say. But, yeah. Hello, Geshmake. The video about the ghost in your apartment is excellent, although I have to admit that I had trouble sleeping because of it. Yeah, I wanted to make that video for so long because I wanted to talk about my experiences in that apartment. I wanted to make that video ever since I was living in that apartment, actually. But I just didn't feel like I could because, I don't know, at the time, I wasn't quite sure how the ghost would react to me, like, reacting to it. So, I wasn't sure, like... Plus, I also kind of wanted to wait to make the video until I left the apartment so I could have, like, a complete list of things that happened. What I didn't know at the time was just how active the apartment was. I mean, the video that you guys saw was 28 minutes long, but I originally filmed a 1 hour long video. Actually, it was more than an hour. It was an hour and 10 minutes. The video I originally recorded was an hour and 10 minutes long, and I didn't even get to all the stories. Like, after an hour and 10 minutes, I didn't even reach all the stories I had of living in that apartment, which is crazy. It was a very, very active apartment, and it was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. I mean, before living in that apartment, the only, like, real paranormal experience that I could really claim was truly unexplainable was my time working at the Golden Horseshoe in Frontierland. But this apartment blew that out of the water. I mean, it was so active. It was just insane how active it was. So yeah, I mean, I see some of you guys watched it. Let's see. I guess people are talking about the SS United States. I don't know. Ella says, it's quite warm here in Austria. No jacket needed during the day yet. Yeah, I mean, we had some really nice cold weather just last week. I was going on walks in the morning. I got to put on my jacket, and that's what the thing I love about cold weather. I can put on layers. I can dress nicely. I don't. You know, I don't normally wear a t-shirt like I'm wearing right now. I usually dress nicely, but I can't do that in warm weather because it's too hot for me to wear that kind of stuff. So, you know, and even right now I have like a fan blowing on me at full blast because it is so warm in this room. It's actually warmer in this room than it is in the rest of the apartment. It's just this room, just, my God. It's like a furnace. Ozzy says, awesome video on your story. Thanks so much. Louis Wright says, Americans don't have mince pies. How can you not love mince pies? I smell heresy. But good on you for making your own treats for your tea. Love that dedication. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it started off as me making my own treats for tea time because of the fact that I couldn't get them. Like these Scottish shortbread, they're Walker's Scottish shortbread. You guys can get them for just a few pounds at, you know, a local, what do you call it? Like a convenience store, just a few pounds. But here, if you want to buy a box of Walkers, you're looking at spending close to $10. I mean, I've seen it as low as $7, but still, $7 is expensive. And so I realized I could not keep buying Walkers. It was just getting ridiculous. Even the McVitie's, I get McVitie's, and I still haven't replaced them with anything homemade. But the McVitie's, just for one little package of it, can be anywhere from $6 to $7. And it's expensive. And so it's just like, you know, anything that is, you know, traditional tea time food, you're either going to be spending a lot of money for it here, or you're just going to have to make it yourself, which is what I opted to do, was to make my own stuff. I make my own Scottish shortbread a lot of the time. Not all the time, because I don't... to make it, you need, like, a food processor. I don't have one, so I use my hands. And I have carpal tunnel in both hands, so it's very painful to make it. Which is why I avoid making it as much as I can. But yeah, so... But yeah, mince pies. I've only had... I've never even had a mince pie before. I've had a meat pie. It was... what do you call it? It was Australian. So when I lived in Southern California, there was a place in Newport Beach that had Australian meat pies because the owners were originally Australians. And so they were like, you know, let's start this business because nobody has these things here. So they were making all these different meat pies. And at first, the neighborhood was kind of like, what is this? Like, what do you talk, like a meat pie? Like, what do you talk, you know? And so, but, you know, people started trying it and they were like, oh, wow, this is like really good. There's like actually like some different stuff, you know, like it was pretty amazing. I don't know if it was even typical quality for Australian food. It was probably even like bumped up because it was kind of a fancy looking place. So it might have been like, as Gordon Ramsay would say, heightened. But yeah, it was really good. But we don't have that kind of stuff here. You know, people don't really eat that. If you have it, it's probably because someone made it for you at their house, you know. So even like something like shepherd's pie, you don't find that very often in restaurants here. Though we do have it, but it's not very often that you find it. And we do have a couple of pubs here and there in big cities, and they're usually really playing up the Irish or Britishness of the pub, and then they'll sell something like shepherd's pie. So it's kind of funny just how over the top, like Irish or British, the American pubs will be, you know, almost to the point where it's almost insulting. It's like there was one pub that I knew of that was called like the Mighty Leprechaun or something like that, and it was like covered in like 4-leaf clovers. I'm like, what is this? So, but yeah. Oh, jeez. I need a new phone case. This thing doesn't stand up anymore. I broke it, that's why. But, let's see. Dave says, nice channel. My parents accompanied the Queen Mary in our boat when she arrived in Long Beach when I was a kid. I can see her from the end of my block in Long Beach. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. Moonzer says, hello Alex, I saw your video. You did an amazing job. Congratulations. I'm sorry I'm late. It's okay, Moonzer. I was running late too. That's why I don't really have any of my tea stuff set up, so. Geshmank says, I have a question. Would you consider opening another restaurant? No. Because when I opened my cafe last, I was dealing with schizophrenia. Well, I still am, but I was dealing with schizophrenia to the point where it was almost debilitating, and the stresses of running a cafe while completely, lost in schizophrenia was really difficult. And I'm surprised even today that I managed to do that. But towards the end, when it came to having to close my business due to the pandemic, it almost came as a blessing in that way, because I had an excuse to not do it anymore, because I was not enjoying it at all. There were things about it that I liked, like when I had really good customers, because we had a really amazing customer base. We had this place that people would go there just to hang out, which is not something you see a lot of nowadays in the U.S. at least. But it was a place where people would go and hang out just to like talk to each other, and they weren't always friends outside of the restaurant. They just came so that way they could meet each other there, and it was just great that way. But in terms of my capacity to do the job, it was getting worse and worse. I was relying more and more on my apprentices. So I had apprentices who were learning how to bake and how to cook and all that stuff for the cafe, and I was training them to do everything. But more and more I was relying on them because I couldn't do the job myself. And so I was forgetting basic things and just having difficulty remembering stuff. Someone would order something, and a good chef, they can memorize several orders at once. That way they don't have to constantly look at the receipt or the ticket, depending on where you work and what you do. But the receipt or the ticket, they don't have to look at it as often. I did. It became more frequent that I would look at something and I'd go, okay, this person doesn't want tomatoes in this sandwich, they want more meat or something. And as soon as I looked at it and turned around, I instantly forgot it. And I'd have to turn back around again. And I would repeat that 3 or 4 times. And my business partner would see that, and he was like, are you okay? He's like, because he's like, you're not on your game. And I'm like, I told him, like, it's getting worse. Like, I can't do it, So yeah, I ended up relying a lot on my apprentices, and thankfully though, they were quite talented. So they often came up with menu items of their own, which was amazing. We had some amazing sandwiches and hot breakfast food that they came up with. They created the recipes and stuff, and so yeah, it was. But it was a lot. It was a lot of work. So I don't think I would ever open another one. I don't think I can at this point, because I look well put together right now in front of you guys. But that's because talking in front of a camera isn't that stressing to me as running a business. So so it's when I have stress put on me that I just cease to function. I mean, it's just, it's insane. So, let's see. Eric. You're so funny, Eric. Let's see. Moonzer says, I'm going to become a tour guide aboard the Queen Mary when I'm 18 in 6 years. I also want to become Commodore when Commodore Everett retires. That's nice. I wouldn't mind being a tour guide on Queen Mary. Lewis Wright says, the big question is, do you have roast dinners? I don't know what roast dinners to you means, but to us, a roast dinner is pretty much any kind of food. It could be chicken, pork, beef, you know, and it's usually roasted, and it comes with, you know, you make like some vegetables on the side, maybe a baked potato, maybe mashed potatoes, you know, so it's usually got the meat, a starch, and a vegetable. So that's usually what like a roast dinner is to us, and so we have a lot of those, but I don't know if it means something specific because, you know, yeah. Muzu says, do you like the QE2? Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot, not as much as I like the Queen Mary or any of the other steamships, but the QE2, yeah, I like it, you know, and it's got quite an interesting history, particularly having, you know, its involvement as a troop ship in the Falklands War. So, yeah. Not a Morning Dragon says, how many leftover boat supplies are left over on Queen Mary? Boat supplies? You have to be more specific. Stardust Girl says, ghosts are everywhere in life. They walk the streets with us on the daily. Not everyone can see them, is all. It's a bit creepy when it's a shadow person. Yeah, I have to agree with that. I mean, there was a time, like, most of my life, I would say, up until I was, you know, 19 or 20 years old, I did not believe in ghosts. Sure, as a small child, I got spooked by things, you know, but, you know, throughout my teenage years, I really did not believe in ghosts at all. I did not believe in any kind of afterlife, even though my family was very religious. But what changed my mind was working at the Golden Horseshoe in Frontierland and just seeing the incredible things I saw there. That kind of got me thinking, okay, maybe this is like totally real. But yeah, it was definitely moving into that apartment a couple of years back that I was just like, without a doubt, I was like, okay, there's no way that this apartment isn't haunted. There's no way that the three of us could be seeing certain things that we saw. You know, there's no way that we would have the same exact experiences. I mean, okay, forget that I'm saying this. Imagine you were in my shoes, and you were seeing a 7-foot-tall figure wearing a suit in your nightmares. Then you start seeing it in the apartment, and then you find out that a 7-foot-tall person that always wore a suit had once lived in the apartment below before they took their own life. So, how would you explain that? Like that is just the biggest coincidence to have imagined something so similar, you know, and the fact that the person, you know, they went, so to speak, I have to be careful what I say on YouTube, but they went, so to speak, just 3 weeks before we moved into our place above their apartment, you know, and so it's just, you know, that is just the biggest coincidence. Like, how do you not consider that to be some kind of evidence of there being ghosts, you know? So, and then let alone all the stuff that happened. I mean, there was stuff I didn't even get to mention in the video. You know, we would hear, like, I would be alone in the house, and I would hear footsteps coming up the hallway. Now, I knew the difference between the sound of the downstairs neighbors walking down their hallway or walking in their rooms versus the sound of it in the apartment. And then the dog, the poor puppy, she wasn't always afraid of the ghost, but she would see him at the same time I saw him. So, I'd be sitting on the couch with the dog, my sister would be at work and so would her husband, and so I'd just be alone at home with the dog, and I'd be sitting on the couch watching television, and then I'd look over, and in the hallway, staring right at me, would be the figure. And then the dog right next to me, I'd realize that she's been staring at it too. She's staring right at it. And I'm like, okay, she sees it, and I see it. We're not even, I'm a human, she's a dog, but we're both seeing the same exact thing, And so it's just one of those things where, how do you explain that if you were in my shoes? And some people would say, oh, well, maybe you guys hallucinated stuff because, they say that if you have a gas leak in your house that, you can hallucinate stuff. The thing is, all these apartments, especially that one, there's no gas hooked up to any of them. These apartments were built in the mid-1990s, and they were electric from the start, no gas lines. So there's no gas in any of the apartments. We always kept the windows open, so, buildup of carbon monoxide, not a thing. I mean, So it's just one of those things where I went through everything in my head. What could it possibly be? And I did this a long time ago, and I just came to the conclusion, there's nothing I can explain to how weird this is. The only explanation I could possibly come up with is that there's definitely a ghost in this apartment, if not multiple, considering the ghost cat and the voice. But Jeffrey says, hey Alex, do you have any favorite scary movies you watch around this time of year? So, one movie that I like watching around this time of year, but I also watch it throughout the year as well, is Silence of the Lambs. It's one of my favorite. I actually have all three movies. I have Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, and Hannibal. I am kind of a Hannibal Lecter fan. I just think his character is very interesting. And I probably should buy the books and read them, because I've heard so many good things about the books. But yeah, so that's something I'll watch. But when it comes to a scary movie, because I don't consider that scary anymore. I think I've watched that since I was a teenager, so I'm not scared of it anymore. But some scary movies I like to watch. I really like The Others with Nicole Kidman. The Others was... that still kind of spooks me, but it's a really good story, so I like that. I also like The Babadook, which was an Australian film. It's not that widely known in the US, but to those who've seen it, they really like it. So The Babadook, let's see, another scary movie. What would be another scary movie that I like? I occasionally, I don't always every year, but occasionally I like to watch Insidious, the first one. Not the second one or the third one, or I don't know how many there are, but the first one. That one can still freak me out. But yeah, I like movies, like scary movies based off of like ghost stories and stuff. Oh, I like to watch Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. That's one I like to watch this time of year. Sometimes I'll watch Sweeney Todd, Tim Burton's Sweeney Todd, but not all the time. I'm not a fan of musicals, so I tolerate the music in the movie. But, yeah, so those are some of the films. Oh, and Nightmare Before Christmas. So I usually watch The Nightmare Before Christmas around this time of year. I consider that movie to be more of a Halloween movie. Most people consider that to be a Christmas movie, but I'll watch it during both seasons. And then leading up to Thanksgiving in November, I like to watch the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. That one is one I like to watch every autumn. Let's see. Just looking to see if there's anything I can specifically respond to. Eric, I haven't heard of Bishop Castle in Colorado. That's interesting. Oh, Jonathan, yeah, you and your wife got scared by the horns on Queen Mary. Yeah, those are pretty loud. They're louder than people think because they've watched my videos and they're like, "Oh, that's not so loud," and I'm like, "That was just recorded from a camera. Like, wait till you're there in real life. It's loud," you know. Um, King of Battleships says, why did Cunard downsize from Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth when they built the QE2, even though ocean liners were on the decline in terms of going across the Atlantic? The reason why they downsized the QE2 was actually because they realized that going forward, any ocean liners they build would only be able to make money back during slow seasons. So, like, for instance, winter time. When fall and winter, or autumn and winter, on the North Atlantic does not have very good weather. And so it's usually the slower time of year to do the crossing. There's not as many people going. So during fall and winter, Cunard realized that they would need a ship that could do cruising. It could go on cruises, seasonally. And so the thing is that in order to do cruising, the ship must be able to fit in ports and harbors and must be able to go through canals. So up until I think it was 1969, most of the big canals across the world, such as the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal, were not large enough to fit ships like Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. They were the ships were too big to fit through the canals. So Cunard decided to make the QE2 narrower, not as long, and definitely have a shallower draft, so that way the QE2 could also fit in shallow harbors like tropical places. So essentially the QE2 was, in a way, the perfect ocean liner because it was big enough at the time to fit all the passengers they thought they would need, and yet it was just small enough that it could fit in pretty much any tropical or any port across the world, essentially. So yeah, the QE2 was a good, one size fits all kind of ship. Not a Morning Dragon says boat supplies, as in stuff used on the ship, anything from kitchen ovens to mooring ropes. So there were a few ropes that were left on the ship. You gotta remember that a lot of stuff has been taken off of the ship in the 50 some odd years that she's been in Long Beach. So when she arrived, she still had all that stuff. But over the years it's been picked and picked and picked, and I can't give you a full list of everything. But there are usually at least one example of all those things you listed still on the ship. At least one. But I honestly don't know enough to tell you how many of everything there is. But as far as I know, there is at least one example of anything that you would call boat supplies still left on the ship. Sunset says, in the UK it's tradition to make a roast dinner on Christmas Day, when we usually have Christmas pudding, mince pies, or chocolate log for dessert. Interesting. Yeah, we have a roast for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and sometimes Easter if people celebrate it. For Christmas, people in the US either do a turkey, a ham, some people do a goose. And then prime rib is another one. Prime rib is very popular, although really expensive. And I did a prime rib. I've actually done a prime rib roast both last Christmas and the Christmas before that. It's not cheap, but it's one of my favorite things to have for Christmas is prime rib. And so yeah, we do that. So yeah, we do a roast, you know. Thanksgiving traditionally is what we call Turkey Day. So so almost everybody roasts a turkey for Thanksgiving. And in my family, our turkey dinners are usually really delicious, especially the turkey itself, because I've had Thanksgiving dinner at friends' houses throughout my life, and a lot of the people often overcook the turkey and it's very dry. But in my house, we cook it really nicely, so it turns out nice and juicy. But yeah, so roast dinners are quite popular, particularly on holidays. Now, Christmas pudding, I don't know what that is to you. To us, a pudding is like, if you can imagine, what do you call that? Imagine the texture of like pastry cream, but just really, God, what would you consider the texture of like an American pudding? It's usually a cream-based product, much thicker than creme anglaise, and a lot of people either do it in flavors of vanilla or chocolate. But I think to you guys a pudding is different. I think to you guys a pudding is like a bread. But I don't know for certain. K4RNA says, I really enjoyed your last ghost video. I did have a weird dream that night. It was like the Bates Hotel with a weird tall guy. I thought it was a fun story. Yeah, it's interesting. That's why I wanted to make the video, because I was like, even if people don't believe the story, I think they'd still find it interesting. And yeah, that experience was definitely one I will never forget. Louis says, roast dinners here in England mainly consist of chicken, meat, lamb, cooked, boiled vegetables, mostly broccoli and carrots, stuffing, gravy, and my favorite, roast potatoes. Yeah, that sounds like a Wednesday night dinner with the family, for sure. Because that's something that we do here a lot. In fact, 2 nights ago, was it 2 nights ago or was it last night? I made a pork loin roast, and I made sautéed squash. It was a yellow squash, sautéed yellow squash, and we had potatoes with it. So yeah, I did that just last night. It doesn't feel like last night. I think it had to have been last night. I don't even remember what I ate last night, but I think I made the roast last night. Hello, Pilar. Hello, Matthew Does Stuff. John C. says, are you thinking about part 2 of the video? I don't think so, because I've learned over the course of my time on YouTube that when you create a part 2 to a video, less than half the people that watched part 1 will come back to see it. So, and part 1 is already not doing very well. I mean, I didn't expect it to, because my channel's about history and almost no one's here to hear a ghost story. But the video that I put out yesterday only has maybe like 750 views, which is extremely low for my channel. And so I imagine, you know, it will be only half that, you know, for part 2. So it's not really worth doing. But, yeah. Eric says, who's your favorite dragon in any movie, TV show, or cartoon you've seen? I know you have a favorite, just gotta tell me. Do it, I say. Favorite dragon? Probably be that dragon from the Never-Ending Story. Let's see. Historic Ship says, Alex, to give you a heads up, if you see a trapped ghost that isn't a trapped ghost, it's a demon. I don't know what that means. Ozzy says, Alex, you ever watch Misery? Yes, I like that movie. Last I saw it was probably 3 years ago, but yeah, I like Misery. Landon says, what are your opinions on Ghost Ship? Is that movie from like 2005 or something? You know, I watched it recently because I saw that movie in theaters when it came out. I snuck into the theater with my friends. I wasn't old enough to see it, so I snuck into theaters with my friends. And we liked it, but I didn't remember it after all this time. So I want to say like last year, I decided to, like, I saw it on like Hulu or something. I decided to rewatch it, and I watched it and I was like, this sucks. I didn't like it at all. I was like, oh, how did I like this movie anyway? But yeah, I didn't like it. Transit Biker says, new stream setup. How cool. How's the new place been? It's been good. I like it, you know. It's nice and spacious and stuff, so yeah. It's just expensive, that's all. Like, I'm really surprised I'm even able to like afford it. But I needed the space, you know. Geshmake says, my nephew was recently diagnosed with schizophrenia. It's reassuring to see you doing so well. I hope that once my nephew gets settled, he can get to a place in life similar to yours. Yeah, you know, one of the things about schizophrenia is that it takes a lot of mental training and mental discipline to get to, like, where I am now. Because when you have schizophrenia, your mind does all this stuff for you. You know, you have no control over it. So learning how to have control over your own mind to stop it from doing things you don't want it to do takes a lot of work, and it takes years of work, and some people don't have the patience for that. I do meditation almost every night. I meditate to recenter myself, but also to contemplate the things that have happened over the course of the day, and and to kind of gain a better perspective of things. So when you have schizophrenia, sometimes the littlest thing can kind of set you off. Someone says something weird, and you think there's some kind of deeper meaning behind it. Maybe they're secretly, hating you, or secretly plotting against you or something. And by doing meditation, I can really consider the situation that happened earlier that day from all angles, and kind of tell myself what is the reality behind the situation and how I should react to it. So oftentimes if something happens right in front of me, I don't react to it because I would like to reconsider my reaction later. So, so it is difficult because your mind is constantly telling you one thing. It's telling you this is the reality that you're in. But later on, when you have the ability to reconsider everything and think about it rationally, you can decide, okay, that wasn't real. That was just what my mind was telling me was happening. And, so it takes a lot of work, but it is possible. And especially when you have family and friends that can kind of understand that, you're constantly in a constant fight to remain sane. I get so many people that, if they don't know me very well, they might be like, are you okay? Looks like there's something wrong. And I have to explain to them that, like, I'm constantly reviewing what's happening in front of me to make sure that I'm staying in the right spot, the right track of mind. Otherwise, it can get away from you, That's one of the reasons why I don't drive. I can't drive a car anymore. I used to drive all the time, but my schizophrenia has gotten so bad that I can't drive because I will get in a crash. So, and I almost did one time. The last time I ever drove, I was driving a moving truck, and I was moving. I used to live in the Bay Area at one point, and I was moving back to Southern California, and I had gotten into psychosis while I was, and this was late at night, like midnight. I'm on the road, and I had gotten into some kind of psychosis, and when I had snapped out of it, it was just in time because the center divider of the freeway was coming right at the front of my truck, and I swerved out of the way, and I ended up pulling over and just like sitting there for a while going, oh my god, if I did not snap out of it in that moment, I would have like crashed pretty horrifically. So having people around you that can understand that you're constantly in that battle and you're constantly trying to keep yourself centered, that helps a lot, because it makes it so you don't feel like you have to explain yourself all the time, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I hope your nephew, I wish them good luck, because it is a very difficult life, and almost nobody around them will see the difficulty that they face, because from the outside, it doesn't look that much different from any other person. But on the inside, there is a whole lot going on. So yeah. Not a Morning Dragon says geese are edible. Yeah, geese are edible. They are, yeah. They make for a very good roast when done properly. And duck is edible as well. But duck is very easy to get wrong, unfortunately. And I've had some duck that went wrong. So... Shiloh says the best horror film ever made, in my opinion, is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Yeah, Psycho was pretty good. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I've only seen it once. I was probably about 10 or 12 years ago. Mark says pudding in Australia is like very rich fruitcake. You can make or buy them as dark or light color. Oh, wow. That I did not know. Oh, Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. That's a good... I like that one a lot. Stephen Hemingway says, speaking as a Yorkshireman, a roast dinner should always have a Yorkshire pud served as a starter. Yeah, I've heard of Yorkshire puddings. That's the one that's like a bread, right? Oh my gosh. John C. says, are you thinking about going to see the new Max train next Sunday? They're introducing a new train for the Max? I didn't know that. I don't think I'll go, though. Christmas pudding in the UK is a pudding made from dried fruit, nuts, and sometimes people add alcohol to it too. It's really nice, especially when served with brandy sauce. That reminds me of like fruit cakes. That's what we call a fruit cake. It's usually got like dried fruit and roasted nuts in there, and then people bake it, and then they add some. They bake it, and at some point in the process, they add a little bit of liqueur to it. Um, but yeah, that sounds like a fruitcake. But fruitcakes in the U.S. are not very popular. People don't usually like them, so we don't. Yeah, I think the last time I ever saw someone serve a fruitcake for Christmas or anything like that was probably when I was a child, when I was like 10 years old. Yeah. Uh, Randomness says, does the Queen Mary 2 still in service? Yes, the Queen Mary 2 is still in service, and she's been doing various voyages around the world, especially transatlantic crossings. So yeah, Queen Mary 2 is still in service. Um, Transit Biker says, it's like there's someone in your mind trying to grab the wheel. Exactly. That's exactly what it's like. It's like every moment, you're behind the wheel, but then it's like someone else is trying to take it from you and steer the car in a different direction. That's exactly what it's like. And it's just like constant. It's just, oh my gosh, like, and it's difficult too because like I don't like going out to public places because I still do, but I don't like to because I already have a problem where I always hear constant voices in my head, and I've learned to know which voices are real, which aren't. But when I'm out in a public place where there's actual people talking, and there's a lot of talk, especially a restaurant, oh my god, a restaurant is just so overwhelming, because it's like it's like, imagine when you're at a restaurant and you're with someone, even if the restaurant is loud, you're still able to focus on the person sitting across from you and talk to them back and forth, as difficult as it may be. But with schizophrenia, it is as if everyone in the room is shouting in your ears, and you can't focus on what the person's saying. It's just them talking amongst a crowd, and you can't for the life of you understand. And you start getting anxious because you know at some point when they stop talking, they're going to expect you to respond to what they said. And and trying to explain to them that you didn't hear them, they'd speak again, but then that you still can't hear them. And no quantity of times of them explaining what they said will get you to understand what they said. And that can stop a conversation real fast, because the other person, sometimes even if they know that you're schizophrenic, they still don't quite understand. So they think like, oh, Alex is rude because he's, I keep repeating to him what I'm saying, but he's not getting it, and I think he just doesn't want to talk to me. That's what it comes off as, and it's so difficult. So a lot of times in conversation, I just smile and nod, because I don't want to get, I don't want the situation to blow up into something I can't handle, So, it's difficult. It's difficult at times. But I have to go to public places because I don't want to be the kind of person that's stuck in the house all the time. So, but one of the things I love about living where I live, because when I lived in Southern California, I would either be stuck in the house or stuck in some public place where it's very loud and crowded. But where I live right now in Oregon, there's a natural trail that goes along a river, and it's very quiet. The only people that are on that trail are maybe some joggers, and they're just, or some, elderly ladies who are just getting their morning walk in. It's a peaceful place where I can go to be outside and to see nature and the trees and everything and the river, and yet it's not loud, and I can just go there and just enjoy a nice long walk. And that's one of the things I love about living where I live, Yeah, Geshmek. Yeah, with meditation, there's uh, like instructions online for how to meditate, but the way I do it is first I relax myself, and there's instructions on how to do that. You starting from your toes all the way to the tip of your head, relaxing every muscle in your body, and then trying to make your mind go blank, and then as soon as you're able to have control over your mind going blank, then you take one issue that you have at a time, just one issue, and then you contemplate that issue, and you think about the various ways that, if it's something that bothers you, think about different ways to look at it, to look at the situation. And one of the biggest problems with stress with people with schizophrenia is that with stress, they end up stressing so much about something that it overwhelms them, and they don't want to do anything about it. They just want to leave it, and then that can make things worse. So one of the things that they can practice with stress is for one thing, if it's something that they cannot control, then they need to teach themselves how to let go of it. If they can't control what that is that's stressing them out, then they can't let it bother them, because they can't do anything about it anyway. And then the other thing too is, if it's something that stresses them out that they can control, then they need to find a solution to it, and then teach themselves to stop stressing about it, because it's something they can obviously control. So that's one of the biggest things. I know it sounds so simple, but a lot of people, even people who are not afflicted with schizophrenia, don't know how to deal with stresses, so they let it bother them, and it festers inside of them. But if you're able to teach yourself to let go of certain things that stress you out, because either you're able to fix it or it's something that you can't control, then you can learn to let go of it and just focus on the things that you can do and stuff like that. And then, of course, if they get in arguments with people, they can try to pause their reaction during the daytime, but then later on at night when they do their meditation, they can consider the argument from various angles and try to come up with a solution that they think is right, or a reaction that they think is right. So meditation really has helped me a lot to learn how to control my reactions. I used to be the kind of person that immediately reacted to something that happened to me, and that can lead you down a bad path because you might make bad decisions. So I learned how to control that part of me, and then to really contemplate things from various angles and try to center myself. But the whole thing about meditation is to relax and try to de-stress. So, yeah. So I'm going through people's comments because some of them are stuff that I answer all the time. Like, it feels like every live stream I answer some of these questions. So I'm trying to skip past them and answer some things that, that I could talk about that's new, Louis says, what are your thoughts of replica sailing ships like the Hermione, an 18th century French warship that now sails in open waters and in storms with the same tech they had back in those days? That's pretty cool. I mean, I've never seen one, but that's pretty cool. Eric says, if you had superpowers, what would they be? I see you having telekinesis and or mind control, since you're so smart. You're really funny. I suppose if I wanted to have a superpower, I'd probably want it to be the ability to read people's minds. So that way people aren't such a mystery to me. Not because I want to invade their privacy, necessarily, but because I'm such a curious person. When I talk to people, or even when I meet new people, I want to know everything about them. I want to, and it gets to the point where I actually exhaust myself asking questions about them. Because I get so curious about people. I want to know everything about them. I want to know what they think, how their mind works. And so, and sometimes that can annoy people, that they don't like to be questioned so much. Or sometimes it's just not an appropriate time to ask them about everything, So, yeah, I suppose, if I wanted a superpower, it would be the ability to read people's minds. That being said, I'm an extremely perceptive person, to the point where I can make very accurate guesses about the way that they act, or the way that they think, or how they would react to something. Usually just by talking to them for a short while. I'm very good at picking up people's their behaviors, both verbally and physically, and judging by some of the reactions that they give me in conversation, I can determine what kind of person they are, whether they're someone I can trust or not trust. Even if it's not even about a trust-related conversation, it's just me listening to them tell me about their day, I can kind of guess who they are and what they're like. And it's gotten to the point I've actually been able to scare a few people because, because I would talk to somebody and usually, like, this was like years ago, but like I'd have like an argument on YouTube with somebody who was being like really incredibly mean to other people. And I'm like talking to them and just being like, okay, why are you acting this way to people? Why are you treating people like that? And just getting in a short conversation with this person, I started to understand a bunch of things about them. And I was able to kind of like reflect back to them who they are in a way that really spooked them. And they're like, did you just look me up or something? I'm like, no, I didn't. I just did that based off of how you act. I can kind of tell who you are and what you do and how you react to things. So it's gotten to the point where I can use it as kind of like a parlor trick where I can kind of guess people. So I can do things like that already. So the only thing I'd want more is the ability to read their mind. So but yeah, I'm not the kind of person that wants a superpower where I can fly or where I can super speed run or something. Like, I'm not that kind of person. I think I'd rather just have the ability to know people. Yeah. So, yeah. But it's actually kind of funny because I warn my friends too, because there's people I've met where just after a few short sentences back and forth between each other, I can understand everything I need to know about that person. And I'll turn to like a friend or something and I'll be like, you don't want to hang out with this person. They're like, why? I'm like, they're not a good person. And they don't believe me because obviously, how could you possibly accurately guess someone from a short conversation? But I can. I pick up on everything that someone gives to me the moment I see them or talk to them. And it almost always turns out that I'm right. I can tell my friends, oh, that's a person you can trust, or that's a person you really can't trust. And it's like, again, it's like to the point where it's kind of scary. I've had a few friends in the past that are just like, how did you know this about that person? And I'm like, I pick up on it, But yeah. Let's see. Historic ships. Does anyone know how the U.S. has $30 trillion in debt? Okay, well, first of all, let's not get off topic, and get on conversations that are politically, gonna bother people. I don't want this channel to be like that. The whole point of this channel is to bring people together using common interests, because that's what I do in real life with my friends. I have friends from various points of the political spectrum, from various points of religious beliefs and everything like that, and one thing that keeps us all together is our common interests. So, but to give you an answer, that kind of debt is what you get for not paying any of it back. So, yeah. Let's see. Hello, the geek of literally, I can't pronounce, literally everything, because it's not the word literally, it's like little early. Yeah, anyway, the geek, hello, good to see you. King of Battleships says, why did Cunard not give the third class a pool on Queen Mary? They gave first and second class pools, so why not third class? Well, because when the Queen Mary was originally built, constructed, and then launched, third class was still just the really, like, low-paying class. They were there to get on the ship and get to the other side of the ocean, and, you know, and for the price, the affordable price, hard to say that because it was also expensive even for third class passengers, but for the price it was, you got what reflected that price. If you wanted a pool on the ship for third class, they would have had to pay even more. So, you know, it's just, yeah, it's one of those things that, you know. But after the war, the types of third class travelers changed. Now people weren't traveling in third class specifically to immigrate to other countries. Now they were traveling mostly for leisure. So Cunard had to change things around. So what they did was, because the first class pool was the closest to the third class areas, they started allowing third class passengers to use the first class pool at certain designated times of the day. And they would keep the passengers separated, so, you know, so third class would have the pool all to themselves. Then the pool room would be cleaned, the pool drained and emptied and cleaned, and then first class would have it for a certain time of day. And then after they were done, the pool room would be emptied, cleaned, the pool drained, cleaned, and then third class would come in and have their time. So they were allowed that, and then even other things too, like the observation bar on promenade deck. It's considered by many people as a, you know, a beautiful first class room. Well, sometime in the 1950s, I want to say, possibly the 1960s, I'm sure Steve will probably correct me on this, but sometime in the 50s or 60s, the observation bar became a third class space. So they blocked it off to first class. I'm actually pretty sure it happened just after the war. I don't know. But anyway, observation bar at one point became a third class space. And so it was part of the third class offerings. All because third class after the war was people traveling for leisure and not, you know, they were not the poor people you think of who were like aboard Titanic, for instance. They were travelers. So, you know, so Queen Mary had to change and adapt with the times. But even then, third class on Queen Mary in the 1930s was still very different from third class aboard Titanic in the 1910s. Louis says, I don't see the interest in mind reading. What's the point of knowing everything? Life is and should be a mystery for us, from the environment around us to the people we know. That's me anyway. Yeah, I can't speak for everyone because not everybody is as curious about everything as I am, but I was always born with an extremely curious mind. I always want to know about everything. As if I pick up an object, I suddenly want to know everything about it, how it was made or how it was grown, depending on what it is. What is it? How is it used? That kind of thing. I want to know about everything. And I often don't have the time to do that, you know. But, I mean, you look around my house, I have books and stuff on almost every single subject there is, almost. Because I just have such an interest in everything. And I just always feel like I have to know, you know, and that's just me. That's just how I was born. I just have an innate curiosity about everything and everyone. And so being able to mind read allows me something I can't do with anything else. You know, if I look at this model of a plane, and let's say I've never seen it before, I go, you know what, I want to know what this plane is, where it came from, everything about it. I learned that it is the H-4 Hercules, it was built by Howard Hughes, and so on and so forth. But with a person, I can't necessarily do that. You know, I can look someone up on social media, or if they're famous, I can look them up on various websites and know what the world knows about them, but maybe I'll want to know everything about them. And I don't know why, but I just feel like I have to know everything about that person. And it's just a curiosity. It's a curiosity I have about everything. I just can't stop questioning everything. And so that's why oftentimes, like my friend Eric, he makes jokes that I'm like a genius. But the reason why he makes those jokes is because you could literally ask me about almost anything, and I know a little bit about that, whatever it is, because it's quite likely I've looked it up before, and I've tried to learn something about it. So the only thing that limits me is the amount of time I can focus on something to learn about it. So I don't know, but if I'm talking to somebody, let's say I'm talking to someone who I think is quite rude and awful, I wish I could know everything about that person so that way, first of all, so that way I can prove to myself that maybe they're not so awful, in the beginning. Because I like to think that people are more complex than just good or bad. If I'm talking to someone who I think is rude or mean or whatever, I want to find a redeeming quality about them. And that's often not easily something that you can find in a conversation with someone who's being very combative with you. But the other thing, too, is that I could use their own experiences to my advantage in an argument. So if I know something about them, I can kind of turn the tables on them and show them how wrong they are, or if there's someone that I like, that I'm like, oh, this person's really cool, but I wish that I knew more about, like, who they are and what they like to do. Because I meet people and I'm like, hey, what are your hobbies? They're like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, how do you live your whole day, every day, and not know what you like to do? So there's something that someone's keeping from me. So see, that's one of the things I do. When someone says something to me, and I ask them, I go, like, what are your interests? And they go, oh, just anything. I don't like those kinds of answers. It's moments like that where I wish I could pierce through their mind and learn everything about them, because if you're telling me that you don't know what your interests are, you're either keeping something from me or you are not interested in telling me. And those two reasons have two things of their own that I want to know about. Why are you keeping something from me? And or why do you think that I'm not worthy of knowing your interests? So, you see, that's how my mind works. Every single time a question pops up, I have two other questions that follow it, And so I wouldn't have to go through that all the time if I could just read people's minds. But, I mean, that's just me. Obviously, not everybody works that way. But, I've always had that kind of mind. I just have to know everything, about something. So... Mark says, I admire people like yourself, Alex, who are not only interesting, but also interested in others. Very engaging. Thank you so much. K4RNA says, I would like to be invisible. Yeah, that's one of those superpowers that, I think most of my life, I've felt invisible to everyone. Because I think I've told you guys on previous live streams that if it wasn't for the fact that I have a YouTube channel, I'm otherwise a very forgettable person. I've worked alongside people. There was one time I worked as a tour guide at Disneyland. I worked alongside people for 2 solid years, talked to them every single day, and just a few years later I go back and say hello and they have no idea who I am. And I'm like, am I really that forgettable? Like, I conversed with you every single day and you don't know who I am? And so that's one of the things, is that I'm used to being invisible. So, yeah. I know what that's like. But I know some other people wish that they were truly invisible. Oh my gosh. Yeah, see, there we go. Steve says, oh my god, Alex, I have been warned numerous times of certain people from you, and you're always spot on. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, I have. It's probably like one of those parlor tricks or something, but like I've always been incredibly perceptive, just able to kind of immediately figure someone out just from a simple conversation. I mean, there's been times where I've seen a photograph of someone and kind of figured out who they were just from the photograph. So, but yeah. And part of that, I think, is part of that very method of curiosity that I have, wondering, you know, why this, why that, and then from that answer, why that and why that and why that and why that. And so it just, yeah, I think that's how I figure people out so well. It's just I'm constantly trying to figure out every answer to the great mystery of who they are. Gishmak says, I'm curious, were you able to figure out any more information about that disembodied voice near the synagogue on the Queen Mary? That was intriguing. No, I wasn't able to figure out anything else from that. I mean, I've had people comment on that video, but nobody's really brought anything forward that could help me figure out more about that voice. So I don't know. And even then, I couldn't figure out what the voice was saying. So, all I know is that my friend Chris was like, you know, Alex, that's the second time that we've had a paranormal experience while on a Discord call. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. So, because the first time was that female voice, that I put in my video I put out yesterday. And then the second time was the voice on the Queen Mary. And he's like, that's like the second time on Discord that we've had a paranormal experience. I'm like, I know. Louis says, do you think a ship with the style and look of an Edwardian liner, but with modern tech and safety, would work as would work for modern audiences? No, I don't think so. Because if I were to say to you guys, name me an Edwardian liner. Do I have to say anything else, actually? Yeah, I'd say name me an Edwardian ocean liner. And most people would be like, Titanic. You know, it's like the first thing that pops in their head. Even though, yes, I know Titanic was built after the Edwardian age, I know. But it is a remnant of the Edwardian age. It still has its Edwardian architecture. But that's the number one thing that people would say. So, people gravitate towards things they're interested in. While the movie Titanic interests a lot of people, you can't mistake that for being a fan. You know, most people, you approach them and you go, oh, would you want to take a cruise on a ship that was like the Titanic? And most people right off the street would be like, not really. No, it doesn't have anything I want. You know, so really the only people that would go on a voyage like that are people who are interested to the point where they want to know what it's like to sail on an Edwardian liner. So no, I don't think so. You know, and most people would not be happy with having to share bathrooms with other people. You know, I mean, when you go on any cruise ship today, you get your own bathroom. You know, so it's just things like that. People don't want to give up, you know, the amenities of today. You'd have to be like a diehard fan who doesn't mind that kind of stuff to want to do that. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of those diehard fans totally mistake their own interest in a ship for the general public's interest. They think, oh, everybody would want that. And I'm like, no, everybody would not want that. You know, I've had people that tell me, oh, I love the movie Titanic. And I go, what do you know about Titanic? And they go, oh, I don't know. I don't know anything about Titanic. And it's because just because they like the movie doesn't mean that they're interested in the ship. You know, so that's one of those things, you know. Arcana Mystery says, why did they have to drain the pool between use? Because that's how they filtered it. So they didn't have like a constant pumping system like our pools do at pool places today. You know, like today we have a constant pumping system that constantly pumps and cleans the water. They didn't have that, partly because they didn't need it. What they did was, after the pool was used, they drained it, and then as it drained, it went through a filtration system, which cleaned it out. Now, sometimes the filtration system would clean for any large particles and then dump the water into the ocean. Or they would filter it, and then it would be recycled and put back into the swimming pool. So, because they did do water changes. They probably did at least one water change entirely during the daytime. Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, I'm sorry. It's difficult staying on my train of thought. But yes, that was how they filtered the pool, was by draining it. Oh, see you later, Ella. Have a good night. Sam says, Mr. Alex, good to see you. Good to see you too, Sam. Plumbit says, Queen Mary should be sent to England because it has fallen into disrepair in Long Beach. But the thing is, you can't mistake the fact that just because it fell into disrepair in Long Beach, that England would have treated it any better. Let's not forget that England had a lot of difficulty even trying to acquire the Queen Mary. There weren't very many people interested in purchasing the Queen Mary when she went up for auction. In England, or in Britain in general. There weren't very many people looking to get the ship. And even then, the weather would have been a huge factor in the Queen Mary's downfall in Great Britain. One of the reasons why, despite the Queen Mary's neglect, that she has lasted all this long is because of the mild Long Beach weather. So, as bad as, as her neglect has been, the weather has been so mild that it hasn't made things too much worse. At least not compared to how it would be in Britain, because you go through periods of snow and stuff like that, and the snow, just a couple of years of neglect, ship would have been gone. I do not believe that, at least at the time, anyone in the UK could have properly taken care of the ship the way it needed to be. Post-war Britain was going through a lot of turmoil, a lot of change. There was a lot of difficulties they had to get through. I mean, just look at everything from the post-war all the way through the Margaret Thatcher age. There was all kinds of stuff happening in Britain, and there wasn't a lot of money to go around. There was always nationwide power outages and stuff like that just to save on fuel and stuff like that. I just do not see the Queen Mary having survived all this time in the UK. I think she probably would have met her demise a lot sooner. At least in Long Beach, Queen Mary was near a lot of tourist attractions, like Disneyland, and Los Angeles and Hollywood. All those tourist attractions brought a lot of people to the land, it kept the local economy pretty stable for, the last 50 years. And because of all that visitation, it gave people a reason to visit the Queen Mary despite her neglect and lack of marketing. So yeah, I think honestly Long Beach was and still is the best place for the Queen Mary. Arcana says people don't really have hobbies anymore unless you consider being online all the time. Well, the thing is that, like, because I know you're responding to when I was talking about why someone wouldn't tell me what their hobbies are or whatever. People do have hobbies. It's just the definition of hobbies has changed. Most people who claim that they don't do anything all day probably play video games all day. I know because I found out from people who tell me, oh, I don't really do anything. I find out that what they do is they play video games all day, and they just don't want to tell me that because maybe it's embarrassing. So the thing is, they do stuff. Obviously, people don't just sit there and stare at a wall for 6 hours until it's bedtime. They do something. So yeah, that's one of those things that I'm like, people do stuff. It's just the definitions have changed. But yeah, I do know that there's a lot of people that play way too many video games. You could argue that I don't play enough video games. Okay, I can see that. But there are people who they get off of work and like for 8 hours straight they'll play video games until they pass out. And I'm like, my God. Lachlan says, "Hey Alex, has any more work been done on the Mary? I saw the bridge windows have been cleaned." Yes, a lot more work has been done, but I can't report on every single live stream all the stuff that's being done on the Queen Mary. I'd like to save it for my update videos. See. Ah. Ooh, the movie The Village is good too. I know some people don't like that. They're like, oh, M. Night Shyamalan. But I thought The Village was really good. I like that movie. Yeah, that's one I want to see soon. I'm going to have to put that on my list of stuff to watch in the next coming weeks because The Village is a good movie. Oh, Arcana, you play tarot. Interesting. Well, I shouldn't say play. People use tarot to... Well, let's not get into that. But yeah, so... Ship Geek says, I'm the play video games till they pass out guy. That's not good for you. But, K4RNA, thank you so much for the donation. Can we play trains? Yeah, I know, right? Honestly, like, sometimes I get so obsessed with the model railroad I have that I'll just, like, keep working on it until I can't stand anymore. Oh, man. So I do get kind of obsessed at times. Shipwright says, just felt like saying hello, having cuppa with some United States line China myself. Awesome. What do I have to do after this? So, I usually reserve my weekends for my time off. So, I consider all the video production I do during the week as my work days. Because I literally do wake up, eat something, and then I start working on the video for the day. And then I work, on that video all day long. Sometimes even late into the night. But weekends I usually reserve for just me, just to hang out. But, let's see, I think after this, I do have to call one of my friends because he's been begging to have a conversation with me. So, and then I have to cook dinner. I'm not looking forward to cooking dinner. I'm gonna make some kind of roasted barbecue chicken thighs, I think. I love chicken thighs. And then some kind of macaroni and cheese or something on the side. So I make the macaroni and cheese from scratch. Well, not the noodles. The noodles themselves I don't make from scratch. But the sauce I make from scratch. So... Gishmak says, the videos are getting better and better. Oh, thanks so much. I put a lot of work into them. So, I'm hoping, each time I put out a video, I'm thinking, man, I hope this video does well. Arcana says, I really appreciate your channel. Thank you for all the work you put into it. Oh, thanks so much. Louis says, why is it that from what I've seen, that a lot more modern passenger ships capsize much more easily than older designs from the 20th century? Isn't that a huge design flaw? Well, I don't know all the ships that have capsized recently, but if there is that problem, then I would probably have to point to the fact that, you know, most ships today, they prioritize how many people they can... Okay, let me put it this way. Ocean liners like Titanic or Queen Mary, they had what's called a really deep draft. So they went really deep underwater. And that depth underwater and all that weight underwater helped to balance out the weight on top of the water. So the part of the ship that's above the waterline. It helped to balance that out and prevent it from being too top heavy. But the thing is that when you have ships that go that deep underwater, you can't bring them into very many ports. You know, for instance, here's a good example. The RMS Queen Mary, the original. If she were to be brought into Long Beach today, she wouldn't fit in the harbor. I'm not even kidding, because her draft is too deep. In order for her to even be moored to the dock that she's at, they had to cut a narrow channel into the bed of the harbor just to move the Queen Mary into the harbor. So the thing is that if the Queen Mary were to like come into port today and try to park more at the Carnival Cruise Terminal, for instance, she wouldn't fit. It's not deep enough. So the thing is that ships today, they can make a lot more money if more of the interior space of the ship is dedicated to passengers and passenger amenities. So it's like a ratio kind of thing. How much mechanical spaces versus how much passenger spaces. And the passenger spaces must always outweigh by a significant amount the mechanical spaces in order for them to turn a big profit. So, to do that, they make the ships shallower, they give them a shallower draft, and that makes them more top-heavy. But they get around that by including all kinds of stabilization systems. So when those stabilization systems fail, the ship has to rely on its draft to keep it upright. But the draft is so minimal that it's almost at that tipping point where the ship really is not that comfortable without its stabilization systems. So some ships, some cruise ships specifically, they heavily rely on their stabilization systems for a comfortable ride. Whereas, most ocean liners in the past don't rely on them as much. So yeah, I hope that made sense. Gishmank says, do you use cheddar cheese in macaroni and cheese? Sometimes, yeah. Like last time I made it, I used a mild cheddar. I don't like to use sharp cheddar in macaroni and cheese because it's a bit too... just punches my tonsils. You know, it's just a bit too sharp. So, hello Sam, how's it going? Stardust says, we just saw the Dracula movie in theaters called The Last Voyage. It was good. Oh yeah, I want to see that too. No, that's called The Last Voyage. Well, there's one that's coming out on one streaming service, but it's not called like Last Voyage. It's called like, I don't know. It's something with a D, but it's not Dracula. It's like, it's the name of a ship. But I don't know. But anyway, Arcana says, do you know about Venice and the ban on ships? They were ruining the area. Yeah, I've heard of the fact that they've kind of banned large cruise ships from coming into port at Venice. Which, I don't know much about the situation, but from what I do know, it sounds like it was necessary. Because the cruise ships, it wasn't just about like the fact that they destroyed views, but it was also that the cruise ships were causing physical damage to the city of Venice. It was causing the city to sink further because the cruise ships created such a draft as they moved through the shallow water. It pulled water around the city, and that pulled silt and dirt with it, and that silt and dirt was necessary to keep Venice built up. I mean, that's as far as I know, but yeah. Geshmank says, that's true. In fact, many harbors have to dredge their channels every few years due to sediment buildup. The LA harbor just dredged their main channel. Yep. Sheridan is here. Morning. Haven't been here for a while due to time difference. Good to see. Good to see you too. Yeah, I know the time difference is crazy. I've been having to do these live streams earlier in the day because that's when most of the people are on the channel. Geek of literally everything says is the Last Voyage on Netflix. I don't know because when you mentioned a Dracula movie, I was picturing the other movie, the one that has like a name that starts with a D. It's like Demeter or something, or Demeter. It's the name of the ship in the movie. So yeah, I don't think it's the same movie that we're talking about. Arcana says you can use sharp cheddar, but then I think you need to add a bit more butter and more heavy cream. Yeah, but I if I'm at the grocery store, I'd rather just reach for the mild cheddar instead of buying the sharp cheddar. You know what I mean? Like, why would I buy the sharp cheddar and then just spend more money on milk and butter? I'd rather just buy the mild cheddar and just, be done with it. But sometimes I add other different cheeses too. Sometimes like last time, it wasn't just mild cheddar, it was also Gruyere. So there was Gruyere in there as well. Gishmake says, the time difference between Oregon and here in Los Angeles is a killer. What? We're the same time Uh, time zone. Oh, Shipwright says Last Voyage of Demeter. Okay. Okay, I see. I thought the movie was just called Demeter. But alright, that makes sense. But yeah, it's on some streaming service. I don't know if it's Netflix, but it's a streaming service. I know my dad and I wanted to watch it. K4RNA says, what about if you could predict the future? Is that a superhero? Then I could win money on sports games. Oh, jeez. I don't know. It would be kind of cool to predict the future, but at the same time, I kind of see the future for this planet being quite quite depressing. So I'm not sure I would want to even peek into the future. Mark Hooper says The Last Voyage is the movie that featured the Ile-de-France real partial sing. Oh, that's the movie, The Last Voyage. Well, then what's going on? What is this Demeter thing? Time zone between South Africa and America is 7 hours. We're 7 hours ahead. Oh, I see. Okay, Geshmek says... Geshmek was just joking about the time difference. You know, I will admit, K4RNA, that sometimes I am curious about, like, would I want to know when and where and how my own death would be? I don't know. I mean, part of me says, yes, I want to know, so if it's something I can avoid, I can try to avoid it, you know? Like, if it's a car crash, I mean, knock on wood, I hope not. Like, like Jack Dawson says, I want to die an old person warm in my bed. You know, I don't want to die in a car crash or a plane accident or something, you know, like, I don't want it to be painful or whatever, you know. I just hope I'm asleep for whatever it is, you know. So I would kind of want to know when, how, and where, so if I can avoid it, then I can avoid it. But at the same time, if I find out it's something I cannot avoid, like a disease or something, then I probably wouldn't want to know about that, because then I might just be focusing on that for the rest of my life. You know, like, I might just be focusing on, you know, that. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird little conundrum. The Foundation Trilogy. No, I haven't heard of that, Bill. Foundation is also on Apple TV. Interesting. I'll have to figure that one out. Yeah, I think most people, Geshmek, would probably be like, I don't know whether they want to know about their own death or not, you know. It's one of those things where it's just like, ugh, morbid, you know. You know, actually, there is one superpower that I would want if there was a superpower. Like, besides reading people's minds, I would like to live forever. So, here's the interesting thing. To some people, you might go like, oh yeah, well of course, who wouldn't want that? But apparently, most people on this planet don't want to live forever. For various reasons. One, you know, outliving the people they love. Two, you know, seeing the downfall of the planet, that kind of thing, you know. I don't know, I would want to be able to live forever. And the reason why is because, remember how I told you guys earlier in the live stream about my curious mind? I'm always curious about everything. I want to know everything. I want to experience everything. So it's like, I feel like all the things I want to do and want to accomplish in life, I can't do with one simple lifetime. I feel like I have to keep going and keep trying and doing new different things and stuff. So I'd like to be able to live forever, so that way I could just keep experiencing and learning new things. But, nobody gets that ability. So, but yeah, I would if I could. And I know that sounds crazy. People would be like, well, wouldn't you feel alone if everybody you knew, you outlived them? I would feel like sad about the people I outlived, but then I'd also feel happy about all the people I would start to meet and get to know from the start, or like, people saying, oh, well, what if you live long enough to see the end of the world? I think at that point I'm like, we'll probably be living on different planets by that point, and I'd want to see what that's like. I'd want to try to live on a different planet, maybe. I don't know. Part of me is also kind of like, I don't know if I ever want to leave Earth, But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Interesting thought. We've gotten into some pretty deep conversations today, you guys. Sheridan says, when will the world end? The day you stop breathing. That's interesting too, because that is the perspective of the world only exists because your mind, your mind, what's the word I'm looking for? Your mind understands its existence. So if you're no longer around, is the world even still real? Because you no longer perceive it, because you're not around. So that's an interesting philosophical question there. Historic Ship says, does anyone know why the Queen Mary has a well deck? Yes, because the well deck was designed to break apart waves, so that way when a large wave came over the bow, it wouldn't come immediately crashing down upon the superstructure of the ship. The well deck on Queen Mary was designed to push the waves away from the bow of the ship. It didn't work as well as they were hoping, so it ended up being kind of unnecessary. Hello, Justin. Arcana says, if you believe in the afterlife, there is something to look forward to on that side as well. That's one of the interesting things, bringing the whole live stream back around to the first topic. The fact that in the last 10 years, I've started to believe in ghosts and stuff, because I've seen so much now that I just feel like I can't deny their existence. So even though I talk about wanting to live forever, there's a very real possibility, in my mind at least, that, I could become a ghost. There could be an afterlife where you're kind of still around on this planet. And if I still had some kind of intelligence as a ghost, I wasn't just a recurring residual energy, if I had a mind to be able to travel and see things, I think that would make me happy. Like, if I became a ghost, I think one of the first things I'd do is I'd be like, you know what? I want to travel. I'm going to, float my little ghostly body to the other side of the planet and see all these places I've always wanted to see. And maybe then, as a ghost, then I'll have the power to read people's minds. So I can, finally get that superpower I wanted. But just, the ability to travel and stuff. It kind of sucked, though, if being a ghost only meant that you were a residual energy that was forever confined to the place where you last were. That would kind of suck, but yeah. Steve says, Alex will haunt the Queen Mary. Definitely. I've actually thought about it. I thought, if I ever became a ghost, I would do traveling and stuff, but I would have 2 home locations. One being the Queen Mary, the other being Disneyland. I would kind of go back and forth between my little ghostly vacation homes. So I would want to haunt both places. So yeah. That's funny. Alright folks, it is 4 p.m. It has been 2 hours since I started the live stream. I'm gonna get going. I've got a bunch of stuff to do. But anyway folks, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all on the next Teatime stream, which will be Saturday of next week. Oh wait, no. I'll have I'm dog sitting next weekend. We'll have to play it by ear because I don't know if I'll be available. The dog does not like when I go on live streams. She hates not being the center of attention. So, yeah, okay, so I will see you when I see you. Thanks everyone for watching, and see you all next time. Bye-bye.